Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Kemp and I'm Managing Editor of Byte at Creativebrief. And today we are taking our Creativebrief Explores series virtual to explore how brands and agencies are navigating the current crisis to create effective work that connects with consumers where they are today, which for many of us and all of us here is at home. So each Thursday at 2 p.m. on the Creativebrief platform, we will be talking to brands and agencies behind the most compelling work and the partnerships that are making the biggest impact on consumers today. Now, we're super lucky today because we're kicking off with one of the most enduring and effective partnerships in marketing history, Persil, Dirt is Good, and MullenLowe. And to delve into the partnership, we have Tati Lindenberg, who is Vice President of Marketing for Dirt is Good, and Will Dixon, Global Category Director at MullenLowe Group. So thank you so much for joining us. And Dirt is Good is one of the most iconic marketing positionings of the past decades. And the strapline, which is the work of Adrian Holmes in the 90s, alongside the Unilever team, shifted the category from a molecular arms race for cleaning products that promised to make clothes whiter than white, to a brand positioning that was really based on being a force for good. Now, no brand or human being could be prepared for the coronavirus crisis, but for a global brand such as Persil, a brand messaging that celebrated children playing outside was at odds with the reality of a global pandemic that required, across the globe, families and individuals stay inside. In just 10 days, the brand successfully pivoted to a new message across the globe. For years, we encouraged you to get dirty outdoors, but for now, we thank you for playing indoors. So please share your thoughts on the discussion using the hashtag CBExplores or @CreativeBrief. And thank you so much to Will and Tati for joining us. So to kick off, we all know the research. Anyone who works in marketing knows the importance of spending in a downturn. But yet in reality, when we look at the figures, when any sort of crisis like this happens, we do see a drop-off in marketing spend. So Tati, I know you were very conscious of the need to stay relevant to your consumers and not just say something for the sake of saying something. But could you tell us a bit about the thinking behind not going dark?
Yeah, of course. So it all started when the coronavirus pandemic exploded all over the world. The first thing we've done was to simply remove from TV and from air everything which was showing kids getting dirty outside. For obvious reasons, we wanted to stop encouraging such message. And the second thing we were planning to do was to anyhow develop communication around better washing habits, because we have to take into account that it's actually a twofold, I would say, response. On one hand, there was a need to explain to people how to wash their clothes during the pandemic. But on the other hand, there was the positioning of the brand. And the second one is the one I was mostly worried. And in fact, at the beginning, I was a bit concerned about, should we proactively respond? Should we stay quiet? Should we just take things off air? And I remember that on a given weekend, I was tracking the Instagram pages from the different countries. Just as well as context, the brand is in 18 markets and we reach 1.6 billion consumers a year. So actually we have a higher penetration than Instagram. But I was checking Instagram and seeing what the other markets were doing, what other brands were doing. And then I noticed that one of the markets decided to have a point of view, and being present in 8 markets is quite complex to control what all of them are doing. And they basically developed something which was, at a glance, cute, nice, which was this idea about sometimes dirt is not good. So when I read it, I was like, yeah, is it true? But I was very concerned because fundamentally, we don't want to say that dirt sometimes is not good, because dirt is always good. But the context in which you're getting dirty should change, but not the idea, which was the fundamental of the brand. So I remember this was Sunday morning. I spent like 24 hours dwelling on it. Then Monday morning, I called you and I said, Houston, we have a problem. So how are we going to sort it? What should be our brand point of view, and how we can be present, relevant, and meaningful during this period of time. So it actually, I would say, almost happened by accident, and I'm so happy, so glad it happened as such. And that's why we were in a rush, of course, to make it work and faster.
And that must be so challenging, like having such a global portfolio. I mean, it's especially in the midst of a crisis like this, when different markets are at different stages within the crisis. Why was it so important to have a global positioning? Because I can see how sort of dirt is not always good. That's such a sort of, that doesn't fit with the global brand positioning. But how do you balance that kind of global local? I know it's sort of a perennial question for marketeers.
No, I think the positioning of the brand is so strong that we've managed at the end to bring that message everywhere, which was great. To answer your question specifically in general, first, let me put it this way. In general, the way that Will and I have been managing the markets is to ensure that we know what you're doing, we fully understand their needs and their insights, and we have an approach which we call the Federation of Brands. So it's pretty much this idea that there are some guiding principles that all over the world we need to live by, but there are, of course, a degree of flexibility. In this case specifically, my concern is that the degree of flexibility could lead to the executions like sometimes home is not good. So there are instances that we don't really mind much because the guidance is enough for markets to flourish and lend their local insights. But in this case specifically, that case from a given market made me realize that without a global point of view, we could end up in a place that the brand would move away from its positioning in many different locations.
Okay, that really makes sense. So you create a global positioning that has flexibility within it.
Yes.
And Will, I'd love to bring you in here because the speed of this brand pivot is quite something, particularly when you consider the scale of the brand, but also that you had media in play. So can you talk a bit about how you switch that media out and that process?
Sure. I mean, as Tati said, it all kicked off really with a conversation between us on a Monday morning, and this need to develop a global point of view that we could share. And I think, you know, what we really did initially, knowing that this was live and it was happening and it was shifting and changing every 24 hours, we had media in play and we had copy in play. My immediate response really was to sit down, albeit virtually, and discuss it with my partners and team in terms of my global planning lead and creative lead. And it was in that conversation, literally that morning, that we were talking about dirt is good and our heritage, and, you know, and also the fact that for many years we've also believed that home is a great source of enjoyment and learning, and actually we were just going to be hunkering down, and we were moving our position from being outdoors to indoors. And with albeit a simple play on words and shifting to home is good, we felt that that was something that we could really sort of run with. Equally, we're very fortunate in that Dig and Persil has got a rich background in terms of partnerships, the likes of National Geographic. And we were conscious and aware that they were also starting to look at this, and that they had content and guidance that at this time we felt could be really useful and rich for the people that we serve, our consumers. So we discussed that sort of strategically with Tati. Tati was just like, immediately, I love it, let's go, just build it. So I think within 24 hours, we were working on it creatively under Kat, our global creatives lead. And we started to develop the sort of outline of this two-phased approach. First of all, asking people to play at home, and then looking to try and engage them with content and material that could help that process of learning at home and working from home. And we basically developed some initial creative concepts over the next couple of days. Tati set up a WhatsApp group between the core decision makers. So there was literally 2 people, I think, on the MullenLowe side, about 3 people on Tati's side. And we just stayed in check using WhatsApp. I mean, sometimes it's not the most wonderful of tools when it comes to creative work, but it does have its benefits. and speed and being succinct is one of them. And that, I think, enabled us really to move at great speed in the initial sort of phase of creative development. And then it was a case of executing fast. Obviously, with the lockdown situation, you know, traditional means of production were completely out of the window. There's a limit to how much stock photography and material that you have on file can be used. So we decided actually that, again, very much within the spirit of Persil and Dig, we could develop this ourselves. We literally recruited our own children, our families. I sent a note to Tati and her team and said, hey, this weekend, anything you're doing with your kids at home, shoot it on your iPhone. It can be vertical, landscape, doesn't matter. We also put the call out to our network. We reached out to all of our MullenLowe teams. And by the weekend, we had over 200 pieces of material. Nobody on the team apart from Kat knew whose children were whose. So there was an enjoyable moment of seeing who would make who was going to land on the editing floor.
Well, that's a whole new level of office politics, surely.
It totally was. But it was actually, I remember, I think Tati and I saw the first edit on, I think it was the Sunday, and we were texting each other. And it was really quite moving to see how this family could come together at this moment and create something so founded in the heritage and the philosophy of Dig, but, you know, for a really critical and challenging moment in time. And literally edits started to be approved as of sort of Monday. We bought usage, music, localized, social media, all sorts of materials and assets, all being approved by WhatsApp. We also had some of the team in Brazil, so working in different time zones as well. But that sort of unified and brought everyone together. We tapped into sort of in-house editing resources as well as creative. And yeah, I think we got the first assets out the Friday after we were briefed. So it was a record turnaround, I think, for us, for sure.
And Tati, I'd love to bring you in here. And I realise this is very ironic because we are on a Zoom call, but there is a lot of really interesting research in the creative industries right now about Zoom being the death of creativity, about how we've kind of put digital presenteeism, very long meetings, and this whole idea of WhatsApp, you know, bringing the team together to make decisions really, really fast. Is that something that you think you're going to move forward with beyond this period? I mean, what were the learnings for you of that kind of way of working and the speed?
No, sure. No, in fact, absolutely. We and I are about to produce another campaign, and I just told him we're going to set up the WhatsApp tomorrow. So let's get ready for that. No, absolutely. I think the big advantage of WhatsApp over Zoom, for instance, is because there is lack of formality. So it's much more, I would give an example, it's nearly a metaphor that everyone is in the same place, and then someone would just bump on you and say, hey, I just got this idea, or what about this? So the fact that you don't need to formally set up a moment, get ready for that. So it was much faster, because as we would have anything from the creative team, he would immediately share with us, or Lee, like from MullenLowe as well. And in that way, we could receive things faster. But there is also a trick, which I realized we've done nearly by accident, which is because we were just replying by text, not voice messages. From a client perspective, I need to be super concise on my feedback. I could not dwell on a number of different things. Or maybe you do this or do that. So I have to just send a text. So it was pretty much like, love it, don't think this work, change this, or why don't we adapt to that? And I think the lack of formality from WhatsApp, the always on kind of approach, but at the same time, the fact that we needed to be concise were extraordinary. I don't know if I can handle that in every single campaign. It's also a bit stressful. That's why it's one specific one that we want to turn around quickly, that I'm like, let's set it up again. But I think for those moments that you need to come together, it works much faster. In fact, I was speaking with Will a few days ago. We realized we didn't have a single Zoom call for this campaign, because when I called him on Monday morning, it was a phone call. Then we went through WhatsApp throughout the process, and that was it. So highly recommend for moments of crisis.
I love that, and I love the insight about how it makes you more concise in your feedback. It's really interesting, because also thinking about the length of this partnership and this brand and agency. Am I right in thinking it's the longest standing relationship, Persil and MullenLowe, in the world?
Yeah, I think R3 did some research back in 2016, and I think back then they said the length of the relationship was 117 years, because it basically dates back to Lintas, the internal advertising services group within Unilever. But even more recently, with the integration of Lintas into IPG, that was at least 50 years ago. So the tenure in the relationship is a pretty long one for sure.
And do you think that length allows you as a team to be quite blunt with each other over WhatsApp? You've got that embedded trust there, and that allows you to work faster?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
No, for sure. I think, no, there was a level of trust, I think, from both sides. So one, and I remember there were, at least from a client perspective, two moments or 2 points that I needed to trust MullenLowe. One was that they would follow the strategy or the dream that I had in my life, which was, well, we need to make it happen in a way that we build on the strategy of the brand and the positioning of the brand, and we don't move away from that. So that was one important thing. But secondly, as we had mentioned, there was a point on the production of that campaign as well, because it looks gorgeous. It's a stunning campaign, and it was all produced out of UGC. But I think there was a point as well about, we didn't have a formal PPM. We didn't follow the process that we are used to do. So the level of trust came not only in, I know MullenLowe will know what to do with this brand, and they will bring to me what is absolutely correct, and as I said, the dream. But at the same time, once we approved script and the approach, I was like, okay, I know it will be produced in the most beautiful way. And it was indeed. If I remember well, there were very, very few amends that at the end me or my team asked it to MullenLowe. So yes, it was a deep trust, I would say. Well, sorry, I cut you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we all understand that we've got a role to play, and this is very much about being one team. I think we're well connected. I mean, Tati's background knowledge of Dig and its advertising continually amazes me. I mean, Tati will I was only on Friday saying, Tati, I can't remember an ad where we did this. Oh yes, I do. I have it here, and it will be somewhere deep in her hard drive. And so I think that connection and that ability to be able to play to each other's strengths and come together as one united team was what was critical. And if you're one team, trust is built within it, because we have the same objectives, and we all have a clear role to play. And I think that was very true of this particular occasion.
And it's interesting as well from like an aesthetic and sort of brand storytelling perspective. Like the brand pivots has the same positivity of the previous campaigns. Like, even though on paper, staying indoors and being outside could feel like polar opposites, the tone and the style of this campaign make it feel very much part of a long history. How important was that positivity and getting the balance right with that positivity? Because it's such a challenging time for a lot of people. But at the same time, there's been, we've been making a lot of dirt in our house at home. We can create dirt inside. And mountains of washing as well. But like, how did you get that tone? Because there's something in the tone that's quite difficult to get right in this current climate, if that makes sense. I mean, how mindful were you both of that?
I think from our perspective, it was a case of, first and foremost, whatever we did had to be true to Dig and its background and the brand. Now, if that meant that it wasn't going to be right for that moment in time, then we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't be talking. We shouldn't be engaging. But I think we felt that if we were true to the brand and we could have a positive impact and we could potentially play a very, very small part in this challenging period, then we could do that. And I think, you know, we're always asking ourselves, does this feel dig? Is this dig? And I think we've come to really understand and learn what that is, sometimes by occasionally maybe taking the wrong turn, and more often than not, hopefully taking the right one. And then I think it would also just be true to say that we did also run we did run some research in parallel with the process. We did want to just not rely on this small WhatsApp group, albeit highly charged with powerful thinkers. We wanted to just understand, had we got it right? You know, tonally, were we on point? So we did some very quick, again, virtual qual groups and one-on-ones with some consumers, and resolutely they were all very, very supportive. And I think they felt that, you know, this is a product and a brand that has lived under their kitchen sink for decades, and one that they've trusted in, and they felt that, you know, one of them said, if any brand has a right to talk about home, then it's a product that is the heart of home and laundry. And so I think that was also very supportive and rewarding for us, that we thought we have totally got this right. But it's something that Tati will always push us on as well, in terms of just making sure that, you know, we are living up to the heritage of the brand. It's got, you know, really iconic status in multiple markets, and we just need to always try and hold ourselves true to that.
Thank you. And Tati, from your perspective, and particularly kind of looking forward to more kind of user-generated content and the kind of videos that people have been making about some of the things they've been getting up to at home, how important is that positivity, and how do you see this campaign evolving forward?
So, in fact, I think this was one of the first moments, or the first occasion, that we actually use UGC globally. So some of the markets have done that before, but much more in activation type of campaigns. So this was the first time we actually put UGC on TV. I think Brazil might have done this a few years ago, but globally it was the first ever moment. And I think it was good in many different ways. So I worked in Dove before. So obviously I have a deep heritage of real people, real women. And I think bring these realities where it's really important for the brand, is in tune with the context that we're living in. And at the same time could bring exactly what you've mentioned about the right level of empathy with the situation. Because the key concern that we have is when you attempt to shoot a mess at home, it's never as messy as it is in our homes. So I think it's also really nice, because we were very concerned about finding the tonality in which we could show that people are living inside their houses. It's a bit of a mess, but it's okay. But we didn't want to force feed those situations so much. So this is something that we've been discussing quite a lot, how much we're going to use it in the future. And more, in fact, just a sneak peek, one of our next shootings, not the one from WhatsApp, another one, which will come in September in the UK, we are actually also planning something completely different in the approach and the way that we're going to shoot. It's not necessarily UGC, but it's an in-between approach. And I think this is bringing the authenticity that somehow we need to have in the brand, especially now.
And from that authenticity and the incredible amount of consumer touch points you have as a cornerstone brand, I mean, we've seen so many changes in consumer behavior as a result of the crisis, some from just necessity, people not being able to get to the shops, not being able to get an online delivery slot, but also, you know, kind of totally weird consumption habits like the stockpiling of loo roll. And it's such an interesting time from a marketing perspective, because on the one hand, you have marketing commentators that say, we always overestimate how much people change and how much things will change and everything will get back to normal, whatever normal is. But on the flip side of that, you have the argument that that sort of unchanging man view of the world is predominantly preached by people with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. I mean, what's been your perspective? Because it's such a lot of changes happening, both in the way that consumers shop, in the way that the work is created. there's been so many changes. I mean, what do you see as the big changes that are here to stay, and what changes do you think perhaps will just be very short-term ones?
So I think we obviously, because we are a laundry brand, we are talking about laundry and washing. And what we've noticed is like 60% of the population all over the world changed their washing habits since coronavirus, the whole coronavirus situation, and especially since the lockdown. And what we are doing now, we are tracking different markets because, of course, we are in different stages. Some of them are moving out of lockdown, some are still pretty much like in a confined way. And what we've noticed is like the changes that we've seen is people are washing clothes more frequently. Even though they are leaving their houses, they wanted to make sure, I heard we were explaining just when I joined in about the fact that a lot of people would come from like work and so on, and they would make sure that they could wash everything immediately on the day. So you see 40% of people washing clothes more frequently. You have 50% of people actually adding more products in their washing, things like sanitizers, bleach, products that they want to, that would rest assure them that all the germs and the viruses would be removed. And then you also have people, for instance, specifically in the UK, washing at higher temperatures. So you also have around 50% of people washing at higher temperatures. What we believe is like a percentage of that population will stick to these new habits. We've tracked situations like this before. The brand is also present in China. So we saw, for instance, when we had SARS in China, how much that changed consumers' behavior. So we are using some modeling and trying to understand how much of that will stick. What we know for sure is that people are now looking at their laundry habits in a different way. And we believe that some of the changes will stay, some not, of course, but because at this stage you have some extremes. So you literally have people who would remove everything, even shoes, as soon as they arrive home. You have people putting like sprays with like 70% alcohol to make sure that they could remove all germs. This is what we call like people who are highly concerned. But in general, I strongly believe that people's relationship with their clothes and washing their clothes will change. In a way or another, it will change.
And do you think the consumption habits around the way that they buy your products will change as well? Because I know there's been a lot more bulk buying, particularly actually people who can't get to the shops, and they're using new online, they're using Amazon or direct to consumer brands to get those products. Do you think those habits will change?
Yes, I wouldn't say that people would keep buying like pantry loading. I don't think so. As we can see that it actually declined all over the world. But what will change, and we can see that happening, is buying online. I think laundry has been fundamentally what we call a brick and mortar category. So I worked in BPC before, and I remember that in beauty and personal care, obviously we buy so many things online, and laundry was always this sort of like, yes, I'm going to buy like when I'm in the store. But now, because people didn't have an option in many cases, they migrated to an online behavior. And that is very likely to stay. So obviously that has an impact in our communication models, how much more we use like online tools, and it has an impact on our innovations as well. How we can make sure that the Persil that everyone loves is more suitable for an online environment. So e-commerce is here to stay, we are sure.
It's really interesting. And Will, bringing you in here from an agency perspective, and there's been so much creativity in constraint over recent weeks. What's your view? Do you think that we're going to see a lot of change in the way that the creative industries operate and work and produce work? Or will we see over time actually a return to the way things were before?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a general level, we are creatures of habit, and I think shifting those habits is, and indeed, if you're ever given an advertising brief of, consumer behavior change, it's one of the toughest ones you can tackle. So we're not easily shifted, albeit obviously in these times necessity bears out. But I think some of the advantages, and you know, I think the way we've been looking at it is, you know, all we're really doing is building the arsenal of tools that we have available to us now and the options that we have available. And I think we've just fast tracked into, you know, new ways of working, tools, online production, many of which I think, you know, we will absolutely take forward. I think it would be very wrong to say that the old is dead and, you know, will never return. That's rarely ever the case. And I can absolutely see, you know, a role for, you know, some of that historical sort of approaches and tools and systems that we have. I just think that, you know, we have more opportunities available to us now. They've been forced upon us. We haven't, you know, been able to be tentative. We've had to embrace them. And I think, you know, there are many examples, and this hopefully is one of them, where it's borne real fruit. So I just see us learning from those occasions and that moment, and hopefully taking that forward.
Thank you. And thank you both for sharing so many of the learnings from the campaign. Just to close, and I know that you've both touched on some of the consumer habits that are changing, some of the ways that work is changing, from WhatsApp groups to pivoting messages globally in such a short period of time. What would be your one takeaway to the one thing that this campaign and going through this process virtually has taught you that you think you will keep with every campaign you work on from now on? To put you on the spot, Tati, could you go first?
Yes, thank you. No, I think for me the key takeaway is to keep developing advertising which is contextual and relevant, because all of it that we explained to you would potentially not work if the idea was not so extraordinary. So when we say thank you, for years we've encouraged you to play outdoors, now we thank you for staying indoors. That is so powerful that I don't need to show you a key visual alongside. I don't need to show you the full script. You just get it. And this not only helped us as a client to feel we need to produce it, but even one point is when I start engaging with the markets, and as I told you, there are 80 of them, and we've managed to roll it out to 50% of the markets at the end, you can see that the idea was so good. And this is the power, of course, of creativity. If the idea is good, things will follow through. So what I would take is to make sure that we have those sharp contextual ideas. The more, the better. So.
Great.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think, you know, at the end of the day, idea is always king in this situation. But I think to build on that, for me, it wouldn't be anything new, but a reasserting of the importance of one team, of teamwork, of having a core group of people. And actually, you know, the team that oversees this global business is, relatively speaking, pretty small. The advantage we have, though, is our global team. And as I've mentioned, Tati's global brand community, and then the MullenLowe team that we have around us. Many of them have been on this business for many years. We know them all personally. There was a time where we could actually visit them and meet them. And, you know, that has paid dividends, and it's enabled us to move fast, move as one with one objective, and create something hopefully special. So yeah, that sense of one team for me was critically important.
Thank you both so much for sharing. It's such a uplifting insight into how you can pivot a campaign so quickly globally. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and please do share any of your thoughts using the CB Explores hashtag. And do tune into the Creative Brief platform next week at 2 p.m. to hear from the next in our long line of brilliant partnerships and brand pivots, where we will be joined by TBWA and Hun Wine. Thank you so much. Goodbye.